Olá, eu sou Graziela Andrade, professora da Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais. Eu sou artista, sou mãe de 2 menininhas. Uma delas é a Helena, que tem 4 anos e tem paralisia cerebral. E esse foi um dos motivos que me trouxe até aqui. Eu estou agora em Toronto, no Canadá, estudando com o Yuji Oka, que é fundador da técnica Praxis. A gente está com esse projeto que é patrocinado pela FAPEMIG e a gente vai fazer uma série de conversas no Spiral Talk para aprendermos juntos um pouco mais sobre essa técnica.
And my name is Yuji Oka. I'm the founder of Spiral Praxis. I have a studio here in Toronto where I work with children and adults.
Yeah, so today we're gonna talk about the beginning of the technique, and I know that you spent some time on the desert, and maybe that influenced you about this technique. So I'd like to know about that history.
Yes, when I was first developing the technique, this is a body-mind technique, and I felt like I needed a little bit of time to figure things out outside of society and outside of any kind of convention. And the desert was the place to do it. It's a really very beautiful place because I consider what we're doing in Spiral Praxis very natural. And we, especially when we're working with kids, I want to sort of hook into their flow, their natural flow. So not what they are supposed to be or how they're supposed to act or what they're supposed to learn, but how they are just as people. And so, yes, I spent some time in the desert, and it was a time for me to sort of figure out, how the mind works without the pressure of, having any kind of conventional education, but just to see how we are in nature. And I try to bring that feeling back to the kids that we have.
Yeah, you were just talking about flow, and that's a word who begins every time in our conversation. And I would like to know more about flow, like what you understand about flow. What's flow for you?
Yes. A really interesting thing when I was in the desert is that I would be dancing. And when I would be dancing, there was one moment where I looked down and a porcupine just went across. And in the desert, normally you never see any animals because everyone's so sensitive, right? But when I was dancing, it was almost like I was just part of the environment. And that's kind of like the way I see flow. I see flow as like the aspect of nature. It's the way things are. It's the way things move. It's the way things are supposed to be. And so flow is all about hooking in not to the conventional way that we think a person should be or not to be, but just the kind of thing in which, whether it's an animal or a person, they feel comfortable. They feel they're in their proper environment. So that's what flow is. It's this exploration of body mind that we're born with, that we enter the world with.
Yeah. And you are a dancer too. So how is the relation between Spiral Praxis and dance?
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah, dancing is everything. I have a background both in physics and dance. I had an undergraduate in physics degree. So I have a very scientific mind, but I realized during that education that it wasn't enough. That when I was at school, I felt there was something missing in my life. And so I started dancing very late in university, and I decided I wanted to go into modern dance. And that change forced me to have to think in a very, very different way, be and think and feel in a different way. And the dancing taught me about my body-mind. It taught me how to return back to that. And because I had to learn everything new, I had to learn how to dance. I had to learn how to use my body correctly. Dancing became not only an expressive, artistic thing, the thing that we normally associate dancing with, but it also became a place of learning. of really, really deep learning.
So, and nowadays, do you have some change with dance yet? Like the dancers come to you to learn more about their body or something like that? Because I usually saw you with my daughter, and sometimes I think, oh, are they dancing? Yeah, I have this sensation.
Well, I literally have some dancers come in here, choreographers or dancers, they want to learn about their bodies. So I work with them quite a bit, but yes, all the work with the children is also a kind of dancing, and meaning that for Helena, for example, your child, she needs to express herself. You know, it's just part of her life. She has to express her identity and her being through her body. So when I'm working with her, I can't just give her exercises. I have to present it in such a way that she feels that she's being expressive with her body, and she feels that she owns her body. She is the master of her body, and this is what makes her happy.
Oh, definitely. Dance brings me here, and she loves to do everything. When she works with you, she's always happy. So this is very different between the traditional treatment that she used to have in Brazil. I know each one has her important, but I'm seeing her smiling and being more conscious about her body. And she started in Brazil doing Feldenkrais, and I think this changed the way how she related with herself and her body. And sometimes I'm feeling like you are doing some improvisation, dance improvisation. That's what I used to see. So, but there another word that make me curious about, it's energy. You are always talking about how we need to balance our energy in our body. So I want to know more about this.
Yes, so the energy part of the situation has both a technical and creative side to it. And the technical side is very new, I think, and I think it can really help the children in this population. So someone with cerebral palsy, you have to understand just how they're using their energy, because for cerebral palsy, for example, one of the big things is that they can get into a very spastic condition. They can get very, very excited, and then their muscles can lock up. And what you're trying to do is that when they arrive at a certain energy, beyond that energy is what they cannot handle. And so the whole treatment, and this is something that I think somatics can bring, body-mind examination can bring in a much better way, is to change their threshold of energy, their range of energy, functional energy. And this is a very technical process that we use here, and it's new. I've been presenting this at conferences and stuff, and people are very, very interested in this more technical approach. But then there is also the energy meaning the spirit, the quality of movement and the quality of person. And to connect with that is really at the heart of the educational process for these kids. You can't give them something to do, you have to connect with their energy. And every kid has a different energy. And so as a person who's working with a child, you always get stretched.
Yeah.
You have to come and meet the energy, become that energy, become intertwined with that energy, to immerse yourself in that energy. And when you do that, then that dance, that flow, the magic happens. Yeah.
And what about space? Do you think that energize of space can touch us too, like in the sessions? I had this feeling that the space is different sometimes, and the reactions of body it's different because of the space. Do you think that the way we change things with space is about energy too?
Yes. Everything has energy. People have energy. Space has energy. music has energy, everything has energy. So today, for example, we had Helena going down an incline, and the energy there allows her, it's an energetic situation in which the space itself, the quality of space, the incline, gives her an opportunity to perceive her body differently. So now she doesn't have to put quite as much effort to do her rolling, and she can really focus on the very beginning initiations. So in that sense, just like changing the environment and the space of the situation really, really helps. But yes, even people, like having certain people in the room, how they're responding to that child, everything adds in to the some energy that you're conveying to the child. So yeah, this concept of energy is all intertwined with flow. It's a dynamic concept.
Yeah.
There's nothing static, there's nothing set up. It's always constantly flowing and moving, and you have to kind of ride that wave. Yeah.
Yeah, can we tell that maybe energy and flow, it's the base of the technique, spiral practice?
Yes, flow learning is the idea here. And the difference in traditional learning, you have a curriculum and you have a linear sequence of things that you have to do. So in a session you would write down, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and you would do them one by one, and you would have certain repetitions that you do. But in a flow learning thing, you take what comes. And there's so many different things that can happen inside of a session. Maybe the child gets tired, maybe they get extra energized, maybe they find an interest in a particular area. And you have to be constantly ready to move into that direction while still keeping a direction going. So it's a very, very open space, very dynamic space, and it's based on a process rather than a set curriculum.
Yeah, theoretically, I understand all you are saying, but practical, it's very different. So I'm seeing you working and saying that's 9% of the energy. Here it's 8%. Oh, it's so sensible. I'm wondering how you are in this position. How do you prepare yourself for have this kind of feelings?
It's a different type of preparation, and it's kind of the preparation. Dancing taught me a lot about this, because when you're doing the dancing, there's a time where you do your rehearsal and stuff, but then when it's performance time, you have to go, right? And during the time when I was performing, I would always have this thing of like, well, how do I let go? And I learned like early that the way I let go is to not plan anything and to blank out my mind. So this is something that I always do. I never prepare for a class. I like to keep myself completely open. But during the whole process, you're always observing the child and you're making mental notes. It's not like you're completely free. You're constantly, and over time, the objectives become clear. So it's sort of, you have to develop the curriculum and the mode as you're going. So on one part you're completely free and just open, and then the other is that you're always collecting observations and trying to figure out where to go next. But I kind of think flow is an interesting thing because it leads itself. What I like to feel is the child teaches her or himself, and I feel the teacher learns how to teach through that process where the child is discovering. And it's actually a pretty clear path. It's not so amorphous if you're really listening. Yeah.
So you do lots of meditation too and massage.
Yes.
This is part of the techniques.
Yes.
Why? How important is this?
Yeah, it's all about getting the different dimensions of body-mind. So the mind, for example, is so important. It's not just the physical part of it, but you have to somehow encourage the child to use every resource, everything that makes them, their selves, their mind, their emotions, their motivation, their love, their interests. What are they interested in? So we will work all in any way. We will sometimes sing, we will use our hands, We will use anything that we can come up with. And I think this is one of the reasons why the best teachers here in this thing are people who have backgrounds in art and dance. People who understand that the way you mold an experience for somebody is not just through exercise, but through a creative process where they're really stimulated. They have to be engaged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe so much in this engagement to work. So Spiral Praxis is not just for disabled person. Who comes to you?
Honestly, everyone comes to me. All sorts of people come. There's no, it's body mind. What I like to think is that what we're working with is what I call universal body mind. And that means that even fundamentally inside ourselves, all our experiences are fundamentally the same. We have a different take, we have different perspectives, certain things that more weighted on one side or the other. But I like to think that everyone has the same education process. So whether they're disabled or not, I don't try to, when I'm working with a disabled child, I don't think of them as being disabled, for example.
Yeah.
I think of them as just going through a learning process and trying to figure out what part of that learning process they need. I have a lot of people who come in for injuries who aren't disabled, but it's the same thing. They have the same issues. They're not aware of their body. They need to learn how to get flow moving in their body. They need to find another insight, another way of looking at the problem that they have. And so I think everyone is the same that way.
Yeah.
And Spiral Praxis, it even goes outside the realm of the injury work. The injury work is just on the more on the negative, the block side, the difficulty. But fundamentally, for everybody, even with disabled children, what I want them to do is to have joy. I want them to feel that they are reaching their highest potential in every way. It's not like there's something wrong with them, but it's just they have to figure out how to bring the best of themselves out. And I love that process. I love to see people.
And children are more open for the work or not?
Oh my God. Yes, for sure. When I first started this work, I worked with adults, and I would work informally. I would work with people and stuff. And I couldn't get a grasp of things because, to be honest, it wasn't as honest an experience as possible. People are afraid to say what they feel, but with the children, there are no filters. There are no filters, and they are so honest, and what they feel is exactly what they show. So I learned everything through them first. If I didn't learn it through them first, it would be, I don't think I would have gotten that. Yeah, I just really find the children to be very, very inspirational.
You were talking about the levels. I don't know if this is a methodology of Spiral Praxis, but you were talking about 4 levels. Mm-hmm. Could you explain that for us?
Yes. What we work with in Spiral Praxis is a developmental framework, and our mindset is a developmental framework for almost everything. So let's say, for example, I'm looking at our organism. The spine, the way the human body is sort of built is built around the spine. So there's the spine, which is kind of like the root, and then there's trunk, which is like the trunk of the tree, and then there's our limbs, and then there's our hands and feet. There's this sort of progression of finer and finer, fine-tuned things where we start from a basic thing and we become more and more sort of expressive, more and more what makes us human. But everything has sort of this, and the learning process is also like this. So for children, for example, they go through a process where they are dependent, then they become independent, then they become competent. They're able to do what you're asking them, and then they can get into a mastery situation. So these different kinds of ways of looking at developmental sequences is really important. It sort of locates how you're going to guide the child so that you always have a sense of where you are, because you're always flowing and it can get very, very amorphous. So you kind of always have to know developmentally where a child is on these different levels, on the learning process and the physical, everything. So in Spa Praxis, we have all these different developmental frameworks.
So let's talk about Brazil.
Okay.
You went to Brazil and Belo Horizonte for the very first time this year.
Yes.
And we are thinking about how you can go to Brazil again and work with more and more people and to communicate about your work, how it was this experience for you, and are you what's about your expectation in Brazil?
Yeah, I love, this is one of the real perks of my profession is that I get to travel, and what I've known is that there's a big need out there for services that address the needs of children. What's happened is that there's been sort of this huge medical revolution, and there's so many wonderful things that are available for children, medically speaking. But there's also something that's been lost, and that's more of a human connection with the child. Somehow that process, everything has become very specialized. And people, parents, families need to know how to be able to work with their children in a more simple way, in a more basic way, and in a more effective way, really. So Brazil is amazing. I feel like I see that every country has their own difficulties and things that they have to work with the child, but fundamentally it's always the same issue. It's what can we do to get children engaged in the process of learning when they have difficulties, when there aren't resources out there for children. And this project that we're working on is to address this. And I'm hoping very much that we can do this. We want to provide media so that families can sort of do exercises on their children and get more information and just understand that there is another approach to working with children.
That's just the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
There's another interesting part of, I think, in the Brazil, because I am working in different places, but what I find in Brazil is this openness of therapy, and the creative element is huge. And it's very interesting that dancers have hooked into the work in Brazil. Yeah,
the dancers in Brazil. I'm the university, so I'm talking about this place, but we work a lot with somatics in the dance. So I'd like to invite all the person that it's seeing us to send their questions for you, and we can continue here in the Spiral Talks. We are gonna have some inviters to discuss more about somatics and specifically about spiral practice. So that's all for today, but will be continued.
Okay. Thank
you.
Yes.
Yeah.